Mr. Fix-It.
Proudly supported by Aquabion Ireland, the limescale treatment solution. Visit aquabioниreland.ie today.
Well, he has limped into studio after a hiatus. Good morning, Brian Cloonan. How are you?
Good morning, Will. I was on the phone. I wasn't driving, by the way. I was on the phone when I was the way here, and I said, I have to go catch. I was out to catch Grennan, and I said, I have to go catch. I've just landed here at the radio station. And he said, well, you won't get much sympathy there anyway.
That is for sure.
So wasn't wrong.
Who beat you up?
No, I had a knee replacement, Will, and it was tougher than...
You had one of them before?
I had two of those before, so this is my third one. So this is what's known as a revision.
How do you have three knees?
Yeah, I've had five knees, if you think about it.
So you're two originals?
Yes, and then three replacements.
And then two replacements, and then the replacement of the replacement.
Correct, yeah. But out the gap now. Not still moving around as well as I'd like to, not getting the bend on it, which is anybody who's had a knee replacement know they keep fixating on the bend. And there's this great fun where you come back up from surgery and, it's a big operation and they sit you in your bed, and then about 15 minutes later, the physio, as I call them, the physio terrorists arrive in the room, and you have this big long scar down on your knee, and the first thing they want you to do is bend it to 90 degrees. And it's so counterintuitive to what everything your mind and body is saying. But of course, they know what they're doing. And but I'm struggling a little bit with that. But I'll get there. How I will be in a few months' time is all that matters. And I'm delighted. I heard people saying that you really miss me.
Really? And did they have very long noses?
I think they were just being nice.
First caller. I have loads of white marks that I'm told are a lichen or lichen growth, and I'm wondering what's the best way to deal with this. Well, they don't tell us where they have this lichen. I mean, it could be something sexual.
I suspect not.
Are they talking about the roof of their house then?
They could be talking about the roof of the house. They could be talking about cobble lock or brick paving or anything like that. And really the best thing, I actually did a test on this myself before Christmas, and I just looked at it today, or not today, about 3 weeks ago, after the surgery, whatever it was, and I see where it's all gone. So I had a single story extension, and the lichen and moss was bad on it, and I put on the Drive Clear. It doesn't matter what you put on, one of the stronger algae biocide moss killers, so ActiWash or Drive Clear, one of the strong ones, and just put it on and walk away. Everybody wants instant gratification, but every time you power wash anything, now natural slate you can power wash, but probably not doing the same amount of damage as you would to a manufactured slate or as you would to the brick. The problem is when you power wash, you abrade it and you make it more porous than it originally was. And when something is more porous, then it is quicker to grow moss and algae and lichen. So the real secret is put on one of these and walk away. Just let it work. And then maybe in, a month's time or 2 months' time, when it'll really be disappearing of its own accord. If you really have patience, if you want to leave it 6 months, it'll all be gone. It's just gone. But a stiff brush, a really gentle power washing, once it's well and truly dead and broken down, it will come off without any problem whatsoever. But as I say, leave it long enough, it'll just disappear.
Next. Good morning, lads. My mother's significant birthday is coming up, and we're having a surprise party at her house. I'm doing a major tidy up, and I've noticed 3 patches of the tarmac to the front of the house are very faded. Now, I'm not sure why. Is there anything I can do that won't cost a fortune?
Yes. So there are some very good tarmac paints out there. They work really well. They're not expensive, and they're very easy to use. But there's always a but in these things. And the but is that you now have 3 bad patches of tarmac. And when you paint them, you'll end up with 3 fantastic patches of tarmac that look marvellous. But the problem is it might make the rest of it look bad. Because, if you take the bad bit now as being 40% and the good bit, it's not new, so it's not going to look 100%. So the existing tarmac now looks, because it's not been there, it's there for a while in weather, it's probably 80%. But now the new bit is going to look 100%. So, what you could do is brush it on very lightly and try and blend it in. But just be aware you could end up, you're never going to match it exactly. The bottom line is when you do a touch-up like that, it doesn't matter whether it's repainting, patches in a wall where a child has drawn marker on the wall, and if the wall was painted 2 years ago, and even if you use the same tin of paint, I mean, people can never grasp this, where they paint the house, and then 2 years later, there's a few marks here and there, so they touch it up, and they take the same tin of paint, not a new tin of paint of the same colour, the very same tin of paint, because it was half full, and they use the same tin of paint and they brush it on, and obviously it's the same tin of paint, it's the same colour, it's going to look the very same, but it doesn't, because the paint has changed colour because of light and because of everything going on in the house. So when you touch it up, it doesn't look exactly the same, and sometimes the touch up can be more noticeable than the original problem. So you have to be aware of that. And the same thing could apply to the tarmac. And the other thing, you just ask the question, if you have loads of people coming to the house, and if they're going to be parking in your drive, is the drive going to be covered in cars and no one is going to see the patches in the first place? But if you want to do it, tarmac paint works really, really well and lasts very well, in fact, and is a complete transformation. And if the tarmac's very, very bad, and if it's not a huge area, paint the whole thing, it will look fantastic.
Gary says we recently moved into an old cottage and we want to keep the outside of the cottage looking as old as possible, but the inside as modern as possible.
Oh, yeah.
The previous owners have plastered every interior wall in multiple layers of wallpaper.
Oh, no.
So we want to try and strip this back, paint the walls in crisp colours, and he has in brackets, madness, I know. I suggest Gary is not in charge.
That's a very unusual circumstance, isn't it, Will?
Utterly, yes.
Utterly, yeah.
So he's wondering what's the best way to remove the wallpaper first.
Very often wallpaper was used because it disguised bad plastering or cracks in the plaster. So you just have to be a little bit aware of that. And then the other thing you'd say is, if it's an old cottage and if it's external walls, you would benefit dramatically from getting those walls dry-lined. And if you're going to get them dry-lined, you can just leave the wallpaper there and fix directly. The modern dry lining will go straight onto the wall. And it's only 40 to 50 mil, 1.5 to 2 inches of dry lining on top. But, oh my God, the difference it makes to heat retention in the house is incredible. And you can be sure in an old cottage like that, the insulation is either zero or very, very little. So I would definitely, when you consider, I'm going to describe how to get off the wallpaper, but when you consider the amount of work in getting off the wallpaper versus the cost and benefit of putting on dry lining, it just will make, I think it would make a lot more sense just to dry line it. But if you want to take off the wallpaper and you have a lot to do, the best thing is get a spiker, a wallpaper spiker, and a steam wallpaper remover. So the spiker is like something from medieval times, or something like that 50 Shades of Grey would have. It's like a paint roller with about 500 little spikes on it, needles on it. And if you can imagine, you're running this up and down exactly as if you were painting the wall. You run it up, you run it down, you run it up and you run it down. And now the wallpaper that's on the wall becomes a mesh, becomes like a sieve. It's a very, very hundreds or thousands of little holes in the wallpaper, but yet structurally the paper is still fine, so that when you come to try and remove it, it comes off in one big sheet, even though it's now, as I say, as fine as a sieve. But what that means is that when you get your steamer, the steamer is the thing, you fill it with water, you plug it in, and there's a flat plate, and it's exactly the width of a roll of wallpaper. And you just hold this flat plate up against the wall, and all the steam is coming out of the flat plate, and it's trapped now in a little rectangle, the width of the roll of wallpaper, and about 18 inches wide or deep. And you just slowly move it down, and because the holes.
When you say slowly, are we standing there for an hour?
Oh God, no! I mean, your one sheet of wallpaper might take 3 minutes.
Right.
2 minutes, 3 minutes. You're just slowly moving it down. The steam now is going into all these little holes that you've created, and the steam melts the adhesive, And when you've got to the bottom of that, you just go to the top of the wall, you get a knife and you pick an edge both sides, and then you grip the wallpaper and you pull down, and the sheet will come off in one clean big sheet. And it works really, really well. Now you will have to, if you want to paint, you'll have to do a lot of scrubbing to make sure there's no no paste left, because paint and paste don't like each other. And
would you be thinking some sort of a scraper if there is?
Exactly, a wide flat scraper. And I would use a scrubbing brush and some detergent and break down as much of the paint as possible, and then you will do a lot of sanding. So there's a lot of work in getting a nice, really crisp finish. So that's back to where the dry lining could make such a huge, huge difference. And
well, it also sounds like there's a lot of work in not doing what she must be obeyed commands.
Well, yeah, but you'll end up with the same thing. With the dry lining, you'll end up with really crisp, clean, dry, clean lines that'll paint and take paint no problem whatsoever. So that's the rule.
Brian, stay there for a moment.
All right, Will.
I appreciate that. It sounds like a good policy. Many benefits to it. If you want to pick Brian's brain, 083 30 10 103. Text, WhatsApp, indeed send your voice note. Or indeed tease it out with him and call direct on 0818 300 103.
Mr. Fix-It. Proudly supported by Aqua Bion Ireland, the limescale treatment solution. Visit aquabioниreland.ie today.
Brian Cloonan is with us from Cloonan's Hardware in Tullamore until 11 o'clock this morning. And our next question concerns an old chest of drawers that a listener wants to prep for painting. But while doing so, they noticed woodworm holes. So they're wondering, do they just dump it, or can it still be treated and painted? And then if they are to paint, what's the best paint to use?
Oh, look, if it's not a fantastic piece, or if it's not a piece that has, deep sentimental value, if it's your great granny's chest of drawers, your granny's, your parents, or whatever, there's definite merit in trying to kill the woodworm, make sure that it's treated. But it is difficult to be 100% certain. Now, it nearly always works, but nobody wants woodworm in the house. So what you would do with this is one or two things. Time isn't great, in that you're best to treat woodworm when they're active, and when they're active is kind of July and August, June, July, August, you could say. So again, if you're not in a hurry, wrap it up in plastic and put it out in the shed, and then do the treatment in the middle of the summer, which is when they're most active. And there are two things that you can do. Is you can get woodworm killer liquid, and I would say the best way of doing it is take out all the drawers, take out everything, get the woodworm killer liquid, buy a cheap little hand sprayer, a little pump hand sprayer. You'll, €6-7 buy a little sprayer. And the reason I say a cheap one is because the stuff is hard in the seals of the sprayer. So I wouldn't put it in my, if I had a very expensive knapsack sprayer, I wouldn't use it, because it'll affect the seals, and you'll end up regretting it and end up having to replace all the seals, which is a big job in the sprayer. So if you buy a cheap one and then just throw it away afterwards. And what happens is, when you have woodworm holes, that's where the woodworm ate their way out, and they now decide they want to lay more eggs. So they don't travel too far. So in a case like this, they'll probably go to another piece of the same piece of timber. But the eggs, depending on the temperature, if it was kept out in a shed where it's cold, could be 2 or 3 years before they hatch out. If it's inside in a warm house, they'll probably come out every year. And so the second thing you could do is you could get a bug bomb. And I think that's probably a better way of doing it. So the bug bomb is a thing that gives out a vapor. Smoke is the wrong word to use. It gives out a vapor, and it is permethrin is the active ingredient, which is it's organic. It is an organic.
I was waiting
pesticide.
there. I was thinking,
so
is he ever going to find it?
Did I tell you? Did I mention them on strong painkillers? That's the reason, you see. Every mistake.
You're not getting any younger.
Every
either.
mistake I've made for the last 3 weeks, I just keep saying, did I mention them on painkillers? So the permethrin, because it's a vapor, it gets everywhere. So what people tend to do with a piece of furniture like that is they make a tent, like a teepee, and they They put in the piece of furniture, lift it off the ground. I've done it before by putting a piece of furniture on 4 tins of paint, and take out all the drawers, make sure that the vapour has access to every one of the drawers and every piece of timber there. Light this little bug bomb with a match. Now, it's not cause for concern. I know the bomb kind of terrifies people. The only bit of flame is for about 10 seconds at the beginning. So there's a fuse on it, you light it, and then it just kind of smoulders and gives out a vapour for the next 4 hours. But because of that, and particularly if you could put it in a bathroom. You want the smallest area so that the vapour remains as concentrated as possible. So the smaller the space, the more effective it will be, and that's why you're making a tent. Or else, as I say, put it into, if there's room if you have a small ensuite bathroom and you put it in there, it's really just about having the vapour as concentrated as possible and having the space around it as little as possible to make it as effective as it possibly can. But really, June, July, August, best time to do it.
If it's okay, I want to get through some comments on earlier items. There was a huge reaction on the electricity discussion just after the 10 o'clock news, and
sure,
quite a lot of listeners feeling ripped off, I think would be the best term to use. Yeah. One listener pointing out how we were promised a windfall tax on electricity on the super profits they were making some years ago. But what has happened to that super tax? Another listener saying, I understand that big users of electricity may get it more cheaply because of bulk, but surely every building around the country uses electricity 24/7, and there should be a better deal for the smaller operators. That's from Matthew in Birr. Will, it shows the contempt that our so-called leaders have for us if centres who are not employing thousands of people, but only a handful, are treated to this sweet deal. And just on the matter of moving the All-Ireland finals back to August or maybe even September, as suggested by Cormac Egan, among others, Ina in Mullingar saying she fully agrees, doesn't feel right to have them in July, accepts though the calendar is very full and there simply aren't enough Saturdays and Sundays in the year. And Brenda echoing that, feeling that All-Irelands should take place on a weekend in August or even the first weekend in September. It was always a great way to round off the summer. Now, Brian Cloonan is here from Cloonan's Hardware in Tullamore until 11. And the next question comes from Lucas in Portarlington, and he's even mentioning an ozone machine. This is a technical one after these.
Mr. Fix-It. Proudly supported by AquaBion Ireland, the limescale treatment solution. Visit aquabioниreland.ie today.
So, Lucas in Portarlington wants to check if he's on the right path. He says, I'm planning to paint my bathroom, which is very mouldy, so I'm going to scrape off the old paint. I'm going to use my ozone machine inside. Then I'll put a sealer on the wall. I'm going to paint and put the waterproof sealer on top of that. And also I'm wondering, if I am right, where can I get a waterproof paint sealer?
So, I don't know what... Anyway, an ozone really is about removing smells, is mostly used for, so I don't know what the purpose of that. Maybe it has an antibacterial aspect to it. I'm not clear on it, to be quite frank. So the normal thing is when you have a lot of mould on any surface, it's really important that you kill it first. So just get an anti-mould spray and spray it on, and always do, a bigger area than what you can see, and then leave it to work. And then you're going to, as he said, scrape off as much of the old paint. You don't want to be leaving the spores alive before you start doing that, because you're just spreading spores everywhere. So by treating everything with the mold killer, unless that's what the ozone machine does, if that kills the spores, happy days. But if you are going to do that, then do it before you start the work at all. And kill everything, then scrape off and sand down or get everything as clean as you can, and then just use an ordinary bathroom paint with a high anti-mould aspect to it will be fine. There's no need to put a sealer on top. It's just every brand of paint, Crown, Dulux, everything, they all do a bathroom anti-mold paint, and it's really effective. And that's it, just 2 coats of paint of that, and you will be fine. I mean, if you felt very strongly, you could put another coat of the mold killer on top and don't wash it off. But really, there's a lot of anti-mold product in the bathroom paints, specifically designed to stop the mold from growing in the future. So I think you'll be fine.
All righty. Our next caller, they're asking about, well, there's a picture attached, so we'll actually skip that one because I know you have to get up and hobble around. And we'll come back to that one in a week's time. But Joe remembers the old chip wallpaper that
the
you
wood
paint
chip
over.
Wood chip wallpaper. It was hugely popular back in the 70s and 80s.
He says sometimes the old things are the best.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Old knees, not so much.
No, no, definitely not.
Niall in Clonbelogue, he wants to know if the old yellow gas bottle with the normal orange hose going out from the wall, if that would be covered on your house insurance if it doesn't have a copper pipe and a gas regulator that is certified by and installed by a gas engineer.
No, you have to make sure that your gas appliance is installed by a gas engineer, and it has to have copper pipe going through the wall. So years ago, if people can think of, even if you buy a barbecue now, there'll be an orange hose, a rubber orange hose attached between the appliance, which is the barbecue, and the regulator, which is the thing that goes on top of the gas cylinder. But that can't go through the wall, and the reason just being, if there was movement on it, it's a piece of rubber hose, and if there was movement on it and it developed a little hole because it's rubbing against a rough surface, the gas would start to leak, but the gas would start to leak into the wall cavity. And then, you know, if this is Will's house and Will came home one day and turned on a switch, the thing would explode and the wall would blow out. So it is really important that it is installed by a gas installer, and that's why all the advertising goes on. It's really important that it's done by somebody who is qualified to do what they're doing. I believe you've work going on in your is it your ensuite at home at the moment?
Really?
Well, so I'm told. Yeah, somebody in your house at the moment fixing the ensuite loo. Not you, of course.
This is news to me.
Yeah, but this does not surprise me. You haven't a clue what goes on in that house.
I'm more curious how you know about it. What are you doing in my house?
I'm in constant contact with your wife. Constant contact. Daily contact with your wife.
Bad knee, my eye. So, this next listener has sent an image of a door handle, and it's a bit like what you suffer from. It's kind of drooping down a bit. It's not going up all the way. So
there's little blue tablets you can get with.
I don't think it'll work on this lock.
No.
It's a metal lock and handle, but you know when just part of the mechanism maybe gets worn?
Yeah, so it's the lever. It's nearly always, so when you take off the handle, there's either 3 or 4 screws take off the handle. And if you take off the handle and the handle is continuing to drop down, then the spring is gone in the handle. You used to be able to get springs. I don't think you can get them at all anymore now. Certainly none of the suppliers have them. And if you are looking for them, there are different shapes and types. But usually you're going to end up replacing the handle. Now, sometimes what can happen is there's a bar that goes between the two handles, and the bar can become worn, or the little square in the lock that the bar goes through can become worn. And that will also mean that the handle would droop down. But 9 times out of 10, it's the spring that's gone, and you'll end up replacing the handles. Or if you can't get the same handle, bring your handle into a shop and ask for the cheapest handle that has the same type of spring, and take the spring out of the old handle and put it into a new handle. Because
that feels a bit wasteful though, doesn't it?
Yeah, but sometimes, like, if you've 12 pairs of handles in your house, and the particular handle that you've used 15, 20 years ago is no longer available, you don't want one handle to stick out like a sore thumb.
Well, true.
So, it's cheaper to buy one cheaper handle and just take the springs out of it and put it into the other handle and make it as good as new.
Brian, our time is up. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Will.
And if you happen to meet Brian Cloonan, give him hell about his bad knee.
Thanks, Will.
Now, still to come on Midlands 103 this morning, how important a role has the GAA played in the history of your county? And up next, that famous latte levy, is it working? News on the way first.